Okay, so as you can see, we're in the crawl space. What we're going to do is we're going to take this vent fan, which is this. This is like 120 cubic foot a minute vent fan, and we only need about 60 cubic feet a minute. So this is plenty of ventilation for us. What it's going to do is it's going to suck the air from the crawl space and exhaust it out of the house. And then air from inside of the house will come from 2 vents on the complete opposite side of the crawl space. So we'll be bringing fresh, conditioned air into the crawl space. It'll be moving through the crawl space and then out this side. So what we have to do is we have to use one of these fancy little vent kits that we have to vent it out the north side of the house. And the reason we're venting it out the north side is I think it's the least amount of wind, so we're not going to have wind blowing back in and overpowering the little fan we have. This is going to be on the outside. This is going to go onto this. Now we're going to take some of this duct tape. We were using foil tape, but not anymore. Welcome back, guys. So today we're going to be sealing our crawl space, or starting to. First, we're going to be using this styrofoam insulation, which is R4 per inch, and we have 2 inches of it here. We're going to do 4 inches of it, so we're going to have R16 down in that crawl space. But we're going to do this insulation in between all the joist spaces, because right now that's just rim board and not insulated. And then after all the insulation is in, we're going to put down our crawl space liner. Now our crawl space liner is this. So it's a reinforced liner, and I think it is 10 mils thick. So it's not super thick, but then again, we're not going to be walking on it a whole bunch, so it should be fine. In the places where we are going to be walking, we're going to have it not directly on the dirt. We're going to have something under it so that it's not getting rocks or anything poked into it. But the inside of it, the part that's going to be inside the crawl space that you'll be able to see is white, which is going to make our crawl space look nice and clean. And also allow us to see if there's any water spots or moisture buildup a little better on it as well. And then the black goes down. It also has some reinforcement. I think it's just like some sort of fiber in it to be tear resistant as well in it. And how we're going to put that in is we're going to use this double-sided tape right here. We're going to stick the tape to the ICFs. Then we're going to put the crawl space liner up along the ICFs on the edge. And then after that gets stuck up, we're going to come back with this white tape and we're going to tape that up to the ICFs again. So it's going to be double taped at the top of all the liner, and then this tape will tape any of the seams and penetrations as well. So I think the first thing we have to do is cut all of our insulation to fit in between our joist cavities. So they got to be 14 by 20 because it's 19.2. And if we do 20, we can just push and it'll pressure fit right into the joist space. So let's cut these first. So I used a sheet good calculator. I'm not sure if you can see that. Hopefully you can, to calculate how we'll get the most amount of sheets out of this piece. So that's how we're gonna cut it. We're gonna cut all of those pieces out.
Raisin, don't bite it. Hey. Raisin.
No
eating. Can't eat it.
Okay. The reason we went with a styrofoam insulation is because we just wanted something that was easy to install and was going to be pretty cheap, and the batt insulation is just kind of a pain in the butt to work with, and then spray foam is more expensive as well, so this was just kind of the economical way to go for the insulation in the crawl space. Okay, so now with each stud bay, we notch out the corners a little bit with the foam. And then I'm just gonna press fit this right in. I'm gonna put the foil side out. So put one side in first, and then press the other side in. One down, 40 more to go. So after we completed putting the styrofoam in between all the eye joists, which I didn't show you all of, we then put the leftover styrofoam on the ground. Now when I bought the styrofoam, I planned on having a couple sheets left over, and this is because we're going to be putting a liner down, and since we still have rocks and such sticking up out of the ground, I wanted to put something down that we could walk on in the areas where we're going to be walking on it the most by our water filters and our water heater, and the styrofoam works perfect. It's going to give you kind of a stable platform to walk on while not damaging the crawlspace liner by having rocks poke up through it. After we got done putting all the insulation in the walls or the floor I should say, and then putting the styrofoam down the ground where we're going to walk, it was time to move on to actually putting the crawlspace liner up. Now, the crawlspace liner comes in a few different thicknesses, actually a lot of different thicknesses. It comes anywhere from like 4 mils thick to up to like 12 or 14 mils thick, and then it comes in different lengths and widths. So we got a 12-foot wide roll that was 100 feet long. So we were able to cut it into 4 different sections. So we covered our crawl space with 4 different 12-foot wide sections. This gave us enough to go up on the walls on every side and then also cover our big hump that we have in the middle. So that's just kind of the way we did it. We stuck that double-sided sticky tape up first, and that didn't seem to work too good, honestly. I think the white tape worked a lot better than the double-sided sticky tape did, and that's just our experience. Maybe if our substrate was concrete instead of the ICFs, it would have worked better. But from there, after putting it up on the walls, you just kind of have to go around the penetrations in the corners and just kind of do them the best you can. I didn't find a really good way to do the corners, but I definitely found a way that worked for us and isn't going to leak at all, so that's good. Just kind of take your time and think through it and you'll figure it out. I mean, we did, and we're not that smart, so. So in addition to taping the crawlspace liners to the wall, you also have to tape each section to each other. So we started by rolling the crawlspace liner out in the center sections, and then to tape them to each other, we started in the center of the crawlspace and worked outwards to each wall. And that way we didn't have any bumps or any fish mouths or anything in the middle that would be harder to seal or air could get up through. So it wasn't too hard to do the center sections. The 2 that we did in the middle that didn't have a corner on them were probably the easiest ones to do, then the corners were the hardest. So this was the second to last section that we put up, and I don't know if you can tell, but this almost goes all the way to our final wall. It's about a foot before our final wall is. and we just let it go all that length. And then when we came and put in the next section, which will cover that corner and that back wall, we overlapped it just its full length. So we didn't cut it from a 12-foot wide section down to like a 4-foot or 5-foot wide section just to only do that part. We left it that full 12-foot wide, since this is the part that you're going to be walking on the most, since it's by the water purification and the hot water heater and such. That way we have a double layer of protection there. Now moisture might get in between those two layers, but they're still taped together, so it's not going to get past the 2 layers and up into the crawl space.
So, oh yeah, look, so here. So we'll do this just like this.
Now before we put the crawlspace liner in, we were averaging about a 75 or 74% humidity almost constantly, and before the installation we were averaging about 45 degrees almost constantly without any fluctuation down in the crawlspace. But once we got the crawlspace liner in, we dropped down to a 40% humidity, and we've been averaging about 53 to 55 degrees in the crawlspace. So we did get a pop in temperature in the crawlspace since it's a little more insulated, and we did get that humidity to drop a little bit. It dropped about, I guess, 35% almost. So we may end up later putting a dehumidifier down there, but for now this is a lot better. And we don't have the entire crawlspace even sealed yet. We have one more penetration where our gas line comes into the house, just because we don't have our permanent gas line in yet. So once we get that permanent gas line in, that will all get closed cell spray foamed and sealed, and that'll probably help that humidity level as well.
Alright, so yesterday we ran out of water, and I figured this out because we were laying in bed and I heard a humming noise, and I was like, hey, what's that humming noise? And then I realized it was the pump that was just running because there was no water. So we just turned the breaker off yesterday, we got water delivered today, and then I went downstairs to see see the pump turn on. I ran the water for a little bit. I think I heard it turn on and then turn off, not really sure. But when I went downstairs, there's probably about 2 inches of water in the area of the crawl space right by the pump. So I used a cup and scooped it into a bucket for about an hour. And we ended up scooping 5.5 gallons of water out of the crawl space. What had happened is, I think when I put in the unions in between the pump, the pipes going to and from the pump, I didn't tighten it back down to the pump. So the pipes going into the pump had actually come loose and just weren't threaded in tight enough. So I went through, used thread sealant on it instead of Teflon tape, because as I was taking off the Teflon tape, it did some weird things and kind of crystallized in some places. So I used a blue thread sealant for that, tightened it all back down. We're gonna let it sit probably for a couple hours. And right now we are running the crawlspace vent fan pretty hard down there to get all of that moisture out and pull our 23% humidity air into the crawl space, and then pump out that 88% humidity air. And then we also have another fan at our crawl space hatch actually blowing 23% humidity air into there. And I think it is 88% because our little humidity temperature gauge was sitting in water, so that probably wasn't great, because it definitely didn't feel like 88% humidity down there.
So I just wanted to touch real quick on why we went with the conditioned crawl space rather than a normal vented crawl space. If you really want to dive deep into this, Matt Reisinger on the Build Show has a lot of good videos about this. But a couple of the main points I want to touch on is humidity. We wanted to mitigate that humidity issue, which causes mold issues in a lot of crawl spaces. We wanted to mitigate the pest issues that are in a lot of crawl spaces. Having conditioned air going through our crawl space kind of warms up the crawl space as well, so the floor isn't as cold. And then in our area, we have a lot of radon issues. I could be wrong, but I believe radon is a gas that is formed when uranium degrades and decomposes. So I believe uranium decomposes, it releases radon, and radon can cause a lot of illnesses and cancer over long periods of time. So we actually have to have a lot of radon mitigation in this area, and usually they'll drill holes underneath the foundation of houses and basically do exactly what we did, which is put a vent fan in to vent out all of that gas. But so that will mitigate all of those issues as well. And all of those things kind of tie into having better indoor air quality for us and making us kind of live a healthier life. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple things that this does too. But if you guys have any questions about how we did things, leave a comment down below. Make sure you give us a like if you enjoyed this video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We should kind of be back to videos at least every other week. We have our concrete countertops coming up. We are finally done with the bathroom, and then we have a couple projects inside we got to do, as well as we are getting our chickens in a week, so we have all of those things to go over, and we're getting our fruit trees for our little orchard in about a month. So we have a lot of stuff coming up. Like I said, we should be back to videos every other week, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys next time.